Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the dim twilight before daybreak, Cairo stood at the river's edge, where his shadow stretched over the water like an elegant tapestry. The river gently whispered ancient secrets to him, its language of ripples and currents echoing through the silent dawn. Morning sunlight cast its first rays across the water, transforming it into a canvas of liquid gold as he skillfully guided his fishing line through the air, landing it gracefully on the river's shimmering surface. In his mind, this place was a sacred refuge, untarnished by the demands of society, where one could commune with nature and find serenity. Yet, even in this sanctuary, Cairo could not shake a recent sense of foreboding, a creeping suspicion that something was amiss. It was akin to a bird sensing an approaching storm, an instinctual alert. Scrutinizing his meticulously crafted fishing lure, Cairo detected no discernible flaw, yet the unsettling feeling remained. A guttural voice abruptly pierced the tranquility, declaring, "What a grand sight to behold on the river's banks!" Its owner remained shrouded in mystery. Cairo turned to see Tom, a regular client, making his way down the bank. "Ready to help me land the big one today?" Cairo forced a smile, pushing aside his inner turmoil. "Always, Tom. The trout are biting well this morning. Let's get you set up." As he guided Tom through the basics of fly casting, Cairo's mind drifted. He'd been a natural at this from the first moment he picked up a rod. His father had beamed with pride, finally having a son to share his passion with after 2 daughters. Cairo had embraced the role, throwing himself into mastering every aspect of the sport. Yet now, at 35, that sense of pride felt hollow. The waders that had once fit like a second skin now seemed to constrict, the vest too heavy on his shoulders. He longed for something, but couldn't quite grasp what it was. "You're quieter than usual today," Tom remarked as they broke for lunch. "Everything all right?" Cairo nodded, unwrapping his sandwich. "Just got a lot on my mind. My grandmother passed away last month, and I've been helping clear out her house." Sorry to hear that," Tom said, his weathered face softening. "That's never an easy task. Find anything interesting in all those years of memories?" An image flashed in Cairo's mind, an old steamer trunk he'd uncovered in the attic, still waiting to be opened. "Not yet," he replied, "but there's still more to go through." The rest of the day passed in a blur of casts and catches. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, Cairo bid farewell to a satisfied Tom and headed home. His small cabin, nestled in the woods near the river, had always been a comfort. Tonight, though, it felt confining. He showered quickly, scrubbing away the day's grime. As he toweled off, he caught sight of himself in the mirror. Broad shoulders, muscled arms, a dusting of chest hair, the picture of rugged masculinity. Yet his eyes were drawn to the softer lines of his face, the delicate curve of his collarbone. Shaking his head, Cairo threw on a worn flannel shirt and jeans. He needed a distraction. The stack of boxes from his grandmother's house sat in the corner, silently beckoning. With a sigh, he grabbed the topmost one and began sorting through its contents. Old photos, faded letters, knickknacks from long-ago vacations. Each item held a story. Cairo smiled as he came across a picture of himself as a child, perched on his grandmother's lap. She'd always had a special softness for him, indulging his curiosity about her jewelry and perfumes in a way his parents never had. At the bottom of the box, his hand brushed against something smooth. He pulled out a small, ornate hand mirror. The silver was tarnished, but the glass remained clear. Cairo held it up, studying his reflection. For a moment, he thought he saw something different in his features, a glimpse of someone else looking back at him. The spell broke as his stomach growled loudly. Cairo set the mirror aside and heated up some leftover chili for dinner. As he ate, his eyes kept drifting back to the steamer trunk. It sat in the corner, still unopened, an air of mystery surrounding it. Unable to resist any longer, Cairo set down his bowl and approached the trunk. The old brass lock gave way easily to a firm tug. He lifted the lid, a musty scent wafting out. On top lay a folded piece of paper, a note in his grandmother's elegant script. "For my dear Cairo, who always saw the beauty in everything, may you find what you're looking for." Puzzled, Cairo set the note aside and began lifting out the trunk's contents. His breath caught as he revealed layers of fabric, dresses in a rainbow of colors and styles, silks, velvets, delicate lace, each more stunning than the last. These were clearly from another era, lovingly preserved. Without thinking, Cairo lifted a deep blue silk dress from the trunk. The material whispered through his fingers, cool and inviting. Before he could second-guess himself, he stood and held it up to his body. The dress fell just past his knees, the cut accentuating curves he didn't possess. Yet something about it felt inexplicably right. Heart pounding, Cairo glanced towards his bedroom. He shouldn't. But the urge was overwhelming. Minutes later, he stood before the full-length mirror in his room, the blue silk dress adorning his body. The fit was far from perfect, too tight across the shoulders, loose in the chest. But as Cairo gazed at his reflection, a wave of emotion crashed over him. For the first time in his life, he felt whole. The disconnect that had plagued him for so long vanished. The person staring back at him in the mirror wasn't Cairo the fishing guide, but someone new. Someone who had always been there, waiting to emerge.
"Joanna,"
he whispered, the name falling from his lips unbidden. Tears welled up in his eyes as the realization hit him. This was what had been missing all along. The unease, the feeling of being trapped in his own skin. It all made sense now. Cairo. No, Joanna. Sank to the floor, overwhelmed. Part of her wanted to rip off the dress, to shove these feelings back down and pretend they didn't exist. But a stronger part knew there was no going back. The truth had been revealed, and it was both terrifying and liberating. She spent hours that night trying on the dresses, marveling at how each one made her feel. Some were too old-fashioned for everyday wear, but others could easily pass in modern settings. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, Joanna knew her life would never be the same. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of emotion and discovery. By day, Cairo continued to guide fishing trips, hyper-aware of every masculine mannerism and turn of phrase. But in the evenings, Joanna emerged. She experimented with makeup, learning through countless YouTube tutorials. She ordered a few modern dresses and blouses online, heart racing each time a package arrived. It wasn't all euphoria, though. Doubts plagued her. How would her family react? Her clients? The small, conservative town she called home? The thought of losing everything she'd built as Cairo was terrifying. One particularly difficult evening, as Joanna sat on her porch watching the sunset, a car pulled into her driveway. Her heart leapt into her throat as she recognized her sister's vehicle. Panicked, she raced inside, shedding her feminine attire as quickly as possible. "Cairo!" called out a familiar voice. "You home?" "Just a second!" she shouted back, voice cracking. She threw on a t-shirt and jeans, scrubbing at her face to remove any trace of makeup. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. Her sister, Marie, stood there with a concerned expression. "Hey, is everything okay? You've been pretty scarce lately. I was worried." Joanna forced a smile. "Yeah, just been busy. Lot of guided trips this season. Want to come in?" As they sat in the living room, Joanna's eyes kept darting to the closet where she'd hastily shoved her dresses. Marie followed her gaze, frowning slightly. "Cairo, what's going on? You seem different." The weight of the secret pressed down on Joanna. She opened her mouth to deflect, but found she couldn't lie to her sister. Tears welled up in her eyes. I don't know how to explain it," she began, voice trembling. Marie moved closer, placing a comforting hand on her arm. "Hey, whatever it is, you can tell me. We've always been there for each other, remember?" The floodgates opened. Through tears and halting words, Joanna poured out everything, the feelings of disconnection, the discovery in their grandmother's trunk, the revelation of her true self. When she finished, she couldn't bring herself to meet Marie's eyes, terrified of what she might see. A long moment of silence stretched between them. Then, Marie spoke softly. "Oh, honey, I had no idea you were carrying all that. Thank you for trusting me enough to share." Joanna looked up, shocked to see tears in her sister's eyes as well. You don't hate me?" Marie pulled her into a fierce hug. "Never. You're my sibling no matter what. It might take some time to adjust, but I love you, and I want you to be happy." The relief was overwhelming. Joanna sobbed into her sister's shoulder, years of pent-up emotion pouring out. When she finally calmed, Marie smiled gently. "So, do you want to show me some of these dresses?" The next few hours were filled with laughter and tears as Joanna shared her new self with her sister. Marie offered advice on styles and even helped her practice walking in heels. For the first time, Joanna felt truly seen and accepted. As Marie prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "Have you thought about what comes next? I mean, in terms of transitioning?" Joanna nodded slowly. "I've been researching. There's a clinic in the city that specializes in transgender healthcare. I'm thinking of making an appointment." Marie squeezed her hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. Just promise me one thing." "Anything." "Don't shut me out again. This is a big journey, and you shouldn't have to go through it alone." Joanna hugged her sister tightly. "I promise." In the weeks that followed, Joanna took small steps towards living as her true self. She began growing out her hair, subtly changing her wardrobe to more androgynous styles. She confided in a few close friends, relieved to find acceptance, even if it came with some initial confusion. The hardest part was work. Joanna loved being out on the river, but the ultra-masculine culture of fly fishing felt increasingly stifling. She agonized over how to broach the subject with her regular clients, many of whom had known Cairo for years. Finally, she decided to start with Tom, her most frequent and understanding client. On a crisp autumn morning, as they stood hip-deep in the river, Joanna took a deep breath. "Tom, there's something I need to tell you," she began, voice shaking slightly. The older man looked over, concern etching his features. "What's on your mind, kid?" Joanna cast her line, buying a moment to gather her thoughts. I'm transgender. I've started transitioning to live as a woman." Tom was silent for a long moment, absently reeling in his line. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "I admit, I don't know much about all that. But I do know you've always been kind and patient with an old fool like me. That's what matters, isn't it?" Tears of relief stung Joanna's eyes. "It means a lot to hear you say that." Tom nodded, a small smile crossing his weathered face. "So, do I call you something different now?" "Joanna," she replied, the name still sending a thrill through her. "Joanna," Tom repeated. "It suits you. Now, how about you show me that cast again? I still can't get it quite right." Just like that, they settled back into the familiar rhythm of the river. Joanna felt a weight lift from her shoulders. There would be more difficult conversations ahead, but for now, she could simply be herself. As summer faded into fall, Joanna took the next big step in her journey. With Marie by her side for support, she had her first appointment at the Transgender health clinic. The doctor was kind and understanding, patiently answering all of Joanna's questions about hormone replacement therapy. "It's a big decision," the doctor explained. "The changes will be gradual, but they are significant. Take some time to think it over, and we can discuss starting treatment at your next appointment if you're ready." Joanna nodded, clutching the informational pamphlets the doctor had given her. Part of her wanted to start immediately, but she knew this wasn't a decision to be rushed. That evening, sitting on her porch with a cup of tea, Joanna pored over the materials. The potential changes both excited and terrified her. Softer skin, breast development, redistribution of body fat. It all sounded like a dream come true. But there were risks to consider as well, and the knowledge that some changes would be permanent. As the sun dipped below the tree line, casting long shadows across the yard, Joanna came to a decision. She was ready. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but living as her true self was worth any challenge. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. Joanna started hormone replacement therapy, carefully monitoring the gradual shifts in her body and emotions. She began the arduous process of legally changing her name and gender marker on official documents. Each step forward filled her with a sense of rightness, of finally becoming who she was always meant to be. Of course, there were setbacks. A few clients reacted poorly when Joanna came out to them, some even refusing to book future trips. The whispers and stares in town were hard to ignore, but for every negative reaction, there were moments of unexpected kindness and support. The owner of the local tackle shop, a gruff man Joanna had known for years, surprised her by ordering in a selection of women's waders and fishing vests. "Can't have my best guide uncomfortable out there," he'd grumbled, a hint of a smile beneath his beard. As winter settled in, bringing a lull in the fishing season, Joanna focused on herself. She worked with a voice coach to develop a more feminine speaking pattern. She grew more confident in her presentation, no longer feeling like she was dressing up, but simply being herself. One snowy evening, as Joanna sat by the fire working on a new fly-tying pattern, her phone buzzed with a text from Marie. "Mom and Dad want to have Christmas dinner with us. I haven't told them anything. Figured that should come from you. How do you want to handle it?" Joanna's stomach clenched. She'd been putting off this conversation, terrified of losing her parents' love. But she couldn't hide forever. With trembling fingers, she typed out a reply. "Tell them yes. it's time they met their daughter. The weeks leading up to Christmas were a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Joanna agonized over what to wear, how to broach the subject. Marie offered constant support, helping her prepare for various scenarios. Finally, the day arrived. Joanna stood before her mirror, smoothing down the fabric of a simple green sweater dress. Her hair, now past her shoulders, was styled in soft waves. Subtle makeup enhanced her features, which had softened noticeably over the past months. "You can do this," she told her reflection, trying to project more confidence than she felt. The drive to her parents' house was tense. As Joanna pulled into the driveway, she saw the curtains twitch, her mother peeking out, no doubt wondering about the unfamiliar car. Taking a deep breath, Joanna stepped out. The front door opened, and her parents emerged. She saw the moment of confusion on their faces, followed by dawning realization. "Cairo?" her mother gasped. Joanna swallowed hard. "Hi, Mom, Dad. Merry Christmas. There's something I need to tell you." What followed was one of the most difficult conversations of Joanna's life. There were tears, questions, moments of stunned silence. Her father struggled to understand, while her mother cycled through shock, grief, and cautious acceptance. "I just don't want you to throw away everything you've built," her father said, pain evident in his voice. "Your career, your life." Joanna reached out, taking his hand. "Dad, I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally allowing myself to live authentically. Everything I've done, everything I've learned, that's still a part of me. I'm still the same person who loves being out on the river, who can tie the perfect fly. I'm just finally comfortable in my own skin." Slowly, understanding began to dawn in her parents' eyes. There was still a long way to go, Joanna knew. But as they sat down to Christmas dinner, the atmosphere had shifted from tense to cautiously hopeful. As the new year dawned, Joanna faced it with a sense of optimism she hadn't felt in years. There were still challenges ahead, surgeries to consider, relationships to navigate, a career to reshape. But for the first time, she felt truly alive, excited for what the future might hold. One crisp spring morning, Joanna stood at the edge of her favorite fishing spot. The river flowed steadily, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings. She adjusted her stance, feeling the comfortable weight of her waders and the familiar rod in her hands. With a graceful cast, her line arced through the air, the fly landing delicately on the water's surface. As she began to work the line, Joanna smiled. She was exactly where she was meant to be, both on the river and in life. The journey ahead might be long, but with each cast, each step, she was becoming more and more herself. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its warmth a gentle caress on Joanna's face. She closed her eyes for a moment, savoring the peace that settled over her. When she opened them again, she saw a flash of silver beneath the water, a trout rising to the surface. With practiced ease, Joanna adjusted her technique. The fish put up a good fight, but she was patient, her movements sure and steady. Finally, she reeled it in, admiring the beautiful creature before gently releasing it back into the river. As she watched the trout swim away, Joanna felt a profound sense of connection to nature, to herself, to the life she was building. The river had always been her teacher, showing her the value of persistence, of going with the flow while still charting her own course. Now it seemed to whisper a new lesson, that change, like the current, was constant and beautiful. Joanna waded back to shore, her heart full. The path ahead might not always be smooth, but she was ready to face whatever came her way. With each passing day, she was becoming more fully herself. Joanna, the woman, the angler, the guide. And that, she realized, was the greatest catch of all.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!